Okay, so guys, tonight I wanted to do this study I've been working on for the past few weeks. I've just been doing a really in-depth theological symbology look at circumcision. I did it in Sunday school this week, and I thought, man, this would be really great for a Wednesday night.
No.
To really no, I'm just kidding. That was an April Fool's joke. That was a joke. That was my April Fool. Tonight I wanted to talk about fools in the Bible, because it is April Fool's Day. And I thought, where did April Fool's Day come from? Did you know that actually it is like the most universal holiday in history?
No.
Every culture has had some form of like a pranks day. So like, that's just something that's just always existed. It wasn't always April 1st. It actually used to be, in Europe, it was March 25th, which was 1 week ago today. It was like my birthday. That was April Fool's, or it wasn't called April Fool's Day. It was just called All Fool's Day. And then they changed the calendar up, I guess in the 1500s, and it moved around a little bit. Now it's April 1st. That's what they brought to America. But anyway, April 1st is April Fool's Day. And so I thought, you know what? We're having a Wednesday night on an April Fool's Day.
What a coincidence.
Yeah. Why don't we do a study at the fools in the Bible? There's lots of times that the fools in the Bible, their characteristics are talked about, especially in the books of Psalms and Proverbs. And so that's what we're going to look at tonight. What is the definition of a fool? A fool, in modern terms, it's someone who doesn't use common sense, okay? We all know what common sense means. It's supposed to be something that everybody has, but it doesn't really work that way. A fool is somebody who does not use sense. That's also the Bible's definition of a fool, but they also say the Bible's definition is somebody who does not listen to God's word is a fool. Someone who is blind to it or doesn't pay any attention to it. That is a biblical version of a fool, as well as somebody who doesn't use sense. Now, we don't want to be fools, right? What's someone called if they're not a fool? They're called wise. That's the Bible's two definitions. Are you wise or are you a fool? And so we want to be wise. We don't want to be fools. Proverbs 4:7, it says, the beginning of wisdom is this, get wisdom. You know what? The very first thing, if you don't want to be a fool and you want to be wise, the very first thing you have to do is say, I want to be wise. That's the first wise thing you can do on your path to wisdom. Who wants to be wise and not a fool? Now see, you're a little bit wise just for saying that. Look at all you guys, aren't you smart? But that's the first step. The first step to not being a fool and to being wise is to say, I want to be wise. That's the first step someone has to take. We want to be a wise person. The Bible talks about fools. If you actually go into the Hebrew, it talks about several different types of fools. We always use the word fool, but there's different types. One of them is called the mocker. That's one of the types of fools that the book of Proverbs talks about. What does that sound?
I don't know, but did you mean to do that?
Oh, it's okay. So the first one I want to look at is the mocker. Proverbs 9, 7, and 8. It says, whoever corrects a mocker invites insults. Whoever rebukes the wicked incurs abuse. Do not rebuke mockers or they will hate you. Rebuke the wise and they will love you. So that's how you handle a mocker. What is a mocker? A mocker is one of the ways that you define them is if you try to offer them correction or advice, they just get mad at you. It says, whoever corrects a mocker invites insults. That means if they're rebuked and their response is that they want to insult you, that is what a mocker is, okay? It says, and I'll explain what rebuke means in a second if you don't know. Rebuke the wise and they will love you. See, to rebuke somebody is to correct them. It's to tell them that they're doing something wrong. And it says if you rebuke a wise person, they'll love you for it because they don't mind being told where they're wrong. They don't mind being corrected. So that's why it says rebuke the wise and they will love you. But whoever corrects a mocker, they're inviting insults. It means the mocker is just going to get mad and insult them. They probably will do something like try to turn it around on whoever's correcting them. They'll try to spin it around and say, well, I'm not going to listen to you whenever you do this or that. Or they'll try to say, well, you're the dumb one. And they don't want to get around it. They don't want to be rebuked or corrected. And whenever you have to rebuke somebody, there's right ways to do it and there's wrong ways to do it. I mean, obviously, if you're correcting someone, you don't want to be overly harsh, right? There's a possibility someone could be overly harsh. There's also, sometimes if you're not harsh enough, if you're just kind of like want to joke around about it and not be really serious about it, well, then people aren't going to take your rebuke seriously. So you also have to kind of be firm. Whenever you rebuke someone, tell them they've done something wrong, you have to be firm. You don't want to be overly harsh, but yet you don't want to just be kind of silly about it so that they won't get mad at you, but then they just don't take it seriously. You have to find the balance. So you have to be firm sometimes and not make it like a joke or whatever. And really, that's one of my least favorite things to do as a youth pastor, is to talk to teenagers and tell them if they've done something wrong. That's like something I hate doing. But you know what? It's something you have to do sometimes, and correct someone and tell them where they've gone wrong. And sometimes I've rebuked somebody, and they just like take it really well, and they just receive it. And, I'm like, oh, I'm glad they received. That means that they're wise. They've taken the rebuke, and they're just going to learn from it and do better. Whereas sometimes I've talked to teenagers and told them they've done something wrong, and they just kind of glare at me. And it's kind of a scary look. Like, it doesn't really scare me because I know I'm doing the right thing, but like their eyes start getting darker, like their eyes are just turning black. I've seen that a few times, and I worry about them because then I'm like, whoa, it's not that they got a bigger problem than whatever they've done wrong. They can't even take a rebuke. That's actually an even bigger problem. What the Bible is really telling us in these verses is that, doing something wrong, that doesn't mean you're not a wise person. That doesn't make you a fool. But the way you respond to it, that can turn you into a fool. Just nobody's perfect. Even a wise person is going to make mistakes and do stuff wrong sometimes. But the way that they respond whenever somebody corrects them, that's what makes them a fool. If they're just going to get mad and kind of blow up and throw insults back at the person correcting them, they're a fool. Okay? Whereas if they just receive it and learn from it and do better, that makes them actually very wise. And so I love it if I have to tell a teenager something and they just take it and do better. They're wise then. It doesn't mean that they're a fool for doing something wrong. So do you guys see what's really important? It's not about if you've done something wrong, it's how you respond to it from there. We're all going to make mistakes and do stuff wrong and sin. But how do we pick ourselves up after that? That's really where the issue comes in. So there's a wise way to handle it and a wrong way. It says, don't rebuke mockers or they will hate you. So it's saying when a wise person messes up, they just receive the correction and a fool gets angry. A wise person is repentant when they mess up. They desire to make a positive change. A fool doesn't really care about making a change. A wise person is literally grateful. They're literally grateful whenever someone rebukes them. But a fool is just not grateful for advice. Okay, let's look at the next one. I have 3 I want to talk about tonight. Second one is the scoffer. Who's ever heard of the scoffer before? The Bible talks about scoffers a lot. A scoffer is someone who just has kind of this attitude that they're just like above other people, and anyone who's beneath them, they're just kind of like a jerk to them. They don't think much of them. That kind of person is called a scoffer. Proverbs 22:10. I've got it here. Drive out a scoffer and the strife will go out, and quarreling and abuse will cease. So it's saying if someone's a scoffer and they're just kind of like a jerk about whatever, that's kind of just the best word for them, a jerk. Well, no matter what you say, they always have a sarcastic answer. They think they're just better than most people. They're a scoffer. It says drive them out. Get rid of them because they cause social problems. Psalms 1:1. Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of scoffers. Whenever you sit in the seat of scoffers, it means to hang around scoffers. Even if you're not a scoffer yourself, not one of those type of people, if you're just hanging around those type of people, it's a bad thing. Because what's going to happen if you hang around those kind of people?
You become them.
Yeah, you'll become them. It happens all the time. Whoever you hang around with, you start to mimic their attitudes, and you start to be like them. If you're hanging around bad people, you're going to start doing bad things. And if you hang around scoffers, you're going to start saying the same things that they say. Proverbs 3:34. Toward the scorners, a scorner is like the same thing as a scoffer. And it's talking about God here. Toward the scorners, God is scornful. But to the humble, he gives favor. So, if someone's a scoffer or a scorner, it says God's going to treat them the same way that they treat other people. If they don't like to help other people, they just think they're above them, God's going to treat them the same way. He's going to be scornful to them and not help them. If they're just, if they don't take time for other people, they don't take time to listen to other people, God's not going to take time to listen to them. So we can't be scoffers or scorners because that's the way God's going to treat us. But I like what it says here. Can you guys read this right here? Toward the scorners, he is scornful, but to the humble, he gives favor. So this word but, right there, it means the person on the other end of the but is the opposite of a scoffer or a scorner. And what word is it used to describe people who are the opposite of that?
Humble.
Humble. If you're a humble person, you don't have to worry about being a scorner. Because the humble person is just a jerk and looks down on people and doesn't care about people, really. He thinks he's better. But if you're humble, you're not going to treat people that way. So if you don't want to be a scoffer, be humble. That's the way. And you know what? Did you know that Christians can become scoffers? Because one of the characteristics of a scoffer is that they have knowledge. And they think that their knowledge makes them better than other people. 1 Corinthians says, knowledge puffs up, but love builds up. If you're just getting full of knowledge, but not also getting full of love, all you're doing is puffing yourself up. It's not making you a better person. It's making you look down on other people. So if you're a scoffer, that's why I put on Facebook this week, knowledge can make you a fool. Because if your knowledge is not making you a better person, especially with the Bible, if you're reading the Bible and soaking up all this knowledge and it's not making you a better person, it's just puffing you up. And it's actually turning you into a fool. There's people who go to church and they're scoffers. They just look down on people who aren't Christians. That's not Christian love. So, anyway, that's just a really good tip for Christians. Don't let your Christianity just puff you up and make you think you're better than non-Christians. That's turning you into a scoffer. Okay, finally, there's one more type of fool I wanted to talk about tonight. This one is actually, you might think, well, this isn't me. But let's see if this could really apply to you. An unbeliever, someone who doesn't believe in God, that's another type of fool. Psalm 14:1, you've heard this before probably. The fool has said in his heart, there is no God. That's Psalm 14:1. Now, what do we call somebody who doesn't believe in God? An atheist, yeah. An atheist is someone who does not believe in any God or whatever. I don't think there's anybody in here who's an atheist. But did you know that you can believe in God, but live your life the same as an atheist? Did you know you can do that? And in fact, I'll say this. Most of the people who die and go to hell, they are not atheists. They are people who believe in God. Hell's full of people who believe in God. In fact, everyone there does now. But hell is full of people who believe in God. That is not what saves somebody. Someone can believe that God is real with all of their heart and still die and go to hell because they lived basically as an atheist. And how do they do that? This Bible I was reading, it called it practical atheism. That's why I put it up here. What does a practical atheist do? Psalm 10:4, it says, in his pride, the wicked man does not seek him. In all his thoughts, there's no room for God. That means that the wicked man, he comes to the end of every day, and he hasn't taken any time to think about God that day. God's not a part of his thoughts. He might believe in God. If you asked him, if you said, hey, do you believe in God? He'd be like, of course I do. But at the end of every day, God hasn't moved into his thoughts at all. It hasn't affected any way that he's lived. He's not an atheist, but he's basically living just the same. There's people all over Joplin who would be like that. You could say, hey, do you believe in God? They totally 100% do. They've been to church lots of times. But you know what? At the end of the day, if it's not Sunday, they haven't really taken any time for God because they're the practical atheist. Psalm 10:11, he says to himself, God will never notice. He covers his face and he never sees. So the practical atheist, someone who just believes in God but it doesn't affect their lives, they just go about their day and they think, God doesn't really see the things I do, or maybe God doesn't care. He thinks, why would God care about what little old me is doing? That's probably what he thinks. And he just goes about his business and it doesn't really change the way he acts. He doesn't think God's even going to notice. Psalm 36:1, David wrote, I have a message from God in my heart concerning the sinfulness of the wicked. There is no fear of God before their eyes. Even as Christians, we're supposed to fear God. That means that we take God seriously. Even though I'm saved and I'm going to heaven, you know what? I don't want to be on God's bad side. I still fear God. It doesn't mean that I'm like shaking in fear all the time, but I'm not going to do stuff that's going to put me in God's crosshairs. I'm not going to do stuff that's going to make God mad at me, because he can still get mad at me. I don't want to invite God's judgment. So even as Christians, we should still fear God. But you know what? The practical atheist, he says, there's no fear of God before their eyes. You know what? They go day by day, and nothing about what God would do to them would scare them. They don't think about it. They might have a million reasons for not thinking about it, but they don't. It doesn't affect their lives. So you know what? Even people who've gone to church all their lives, they can be a practical atheist. That's what I'm calling it. They still believe in God, but just like any atheist, they just kind of do whatever they want, and their belief in God doesn't really change them. So that is the third type of fool I wanted to settle on tonight. And, let's just have everyone close their eyes for a minute, because I don't do this a lot. But I just want to know, is there anybody in here and you'd say, No one's looking around. Close your eyes, guys. You just say something about that just really pricked my heart. You'd say, I'm like that guy. He comes to the end of every day, and God has not been a part of my thoughts. And if there's anyone in here like that, if you're saying that, I'm not going to have you stand up in front of everybody. I just would want to see your hand. I just want you to say, Luke, you're going to pray in a minute, and I just want you to pray for me. I'm just right there, and I need to start living my life better. I need to start making God a part of my life. Is there anybody in here who just raised your hand and you'd say that? All right. Thank you for those hands. I appreciate that, guys. You can put them down. Is there anyone else? All right. Thank you, guys. Whenever you raised your hand right there, you're taking a step and you're saying, God, I know there's some stuff I need to get right in my life, and I want to start making that change right now. I want to make you a part of my everyday life. That's the first step. That's the first thing to getting wise, is saying, I need to get wisdom and not be that kind of fool. So just with our eyes still closed, let's just pray, and then we'll dismiss for today. God, thank you for tonight. God, everybody in here, we know what we need to do in our lives. We need to make you a part of our day-to-day lives. So God, with everyone who just raised their hands and everyone else in the room, we just say, Father, we know that you died for us. You died for me. You died for everyone in here individually so that we could be together in heaven someday. God, I don't want to be one of these fools that we talked about in the book of Proverbs and Psalms tonight. I don't want to be someone like that. I don't want to be a practical or functional atheist, but I want to live my life like a Christian, like someone who believes that you're real and someone who's going to spend eternity in heaven with you. And God, I'm looking forward to that right now. So God, help me to make the right changes I need to make in my life and to remember you every day, when I read my Bible every day, when I pray to you every day. Even if I just have a few minutes, I'm going to spend a few minutes and talk to you. And God, I'm not going to live like that anymore.